Welcome to the Story Tinker podcast, a place for in-depth analysis of stories, mainly from Webtoon. Co-hosted by sharp, witty, and dare I say, thirsty fans, we dive deep in every episode, analyzing character struggles, relationship development, and of course, theories. We also interview people working in creative industries. You can follow the Story Tinker on YouTube, podcast platforms, and social media. For bonus content, sneak peeks, and more, you can support the Story Tinker on Patreon. We're really appreciative of your likes, subscribes, follows, comments, and ratings on all platforms. Thanks for listening to the Story Tinker, and let's get started.
Here we go. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 111, Hazy Has Truth with Fwoot and Meg. Hello.
Hi.
Got the trio back together.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Oh my God.
Yep. So we're going to discuss this episode, and probably at the end of the episode, we're going to, or maybe throughout the episode, we'll talk about our impressions of the season 3 premiere in general. Mm-hmm. So we start out with
sorry, Mindy. Yeah. I did want to say something quickly for like people who may be listening, and I forgot to tell this to you guys, but I do have a bit of a cold right now, so if I sound a bit nasally, that is why.
Understood. Feel better.
Thank you.
So we start out with the APD, and William is on the phone, and we hear someone tell him, "That's all there is in the file for this car accident with Hawks. Would you like a copy to be transferred to your precinct?" And Will says, "Yes, please, as soon as possible. Thank you, officer. Have a good day." He's so polite, by the way. So I think he's suspicious. He puts the phone down and thinks, "Where are you, Lauren? What happened to you? It's been 2 days and you still haven't shown up."
Oh, okay. So it has been 2 days.
Yeah, and the next day, we've been told you're in a car accident and recovering at home. Who the hell made this up? And if you truly are safe, why haven't you given any sign of life? And at that, Tristan's still unreachable. Please be all right somewhere, anywhere. Just, yeah. So he doesn't believe this car accident business. He's like, this is shady AF.
Yeah.
Join the club. I am right there with Will.
Yeah, and I like the detail of how it was like, do you want the file, or would you like a copy like transferred to your precinct? Because the car crash occurred outside of the 11th precinct, I'm pretty sure. And so it makes sense for, that issue of the car crash to be filed under a different precinct. So that was just a small detail that I noticed reading this, and I really like that.
Yep. He's still bandaged up. He still looks quite harrowed. You see the lines under his eyes. He does not look well. It's clear he's been worrying about Lauren and worrying if she's still alive, honestly.
Yeah, but honestly, like when I read this, I was like really surprised because I thought that this issue was going to be prolonged a bit, and I thought we were going to like explore Kym and Will's grief more over losing like their best friend, because like Will especially, he's gone like almost no focus for the past few episodes. Like even going into the factory arc in episode 92, we don't actually see his reaction to Kym telling him that she thinks that Lauren is Loon, and in that scene she also confirms it to the audience that she is like very sure that Lauren is Loon. And then with Will, we never really get his feelings on that, and honestly with Kym we don't really get her feelings on that either. Building up to it, it's kind of vague, and it seems like she may be like very spiteful about it in the factory arc, but that's never really established prior. But with Will, it's like even like we don't know at all. Like he goes through with the arrest, yes, but there's no focus on his suspicions of Lauren. He doesn't get in episode 103 with Lauren, he stops Kym from saying her name in 105, but it's still like he's very much like still focused on Kym. And then in 106 it focuses on Kym's grief more with like that hallucination. Again, nothing much from Will. We know that he is grieving and mourning, and he is going through some old flashbacks, but there is not nearly enough exploration into Will's dynamic with Lauren being Loon and Lauren's now perceived death as there is with Kym. And even with Kym, it's contained to pretty much like one episode.
You can sum it up by just saying like the whole thing, like it felt rushed. Like I don't know what else to say about that. Like we were going to take a second and just focus on each individual character, it would take more time, and it felt like the story was more interested in shoving the whole factory thing and just, oh, well, this is this and this is this, and we've taken it with this is a car accident, this is what happened, and just trying to move on as fast as possible. And for us, who spent like several months in a factory, and for the past 5 months, I know me and Mindy have been like, our favorite characters are crushed into our building. It all felt like we've been moving on very quickly, and I feel like that's a missed opportunity right there. Just forget about the narrative issues. That's just I want to focus on Will. Let's make sure Will's okay. Let's focus on Uncle Tristan. Like, how did he feel about the whole thing? Like, the way they drew his facial expressions when this whole thing happened, like, that hit my heartstrings. I feel like that could have been some, and maybe we'll get that in the future, but I felt like if we could have nailed it down right now, immediately after everything happened, it would have hit harder.
So we're going to discuss a lot of things today that a lot of us, like, or Meg and I specifically, I don't know about you, Mindy, that we both have a mutual understanding in each other that, like, yeah, we were not very happy with these things. And because I've had to deal with this issue over the last few days trying to talk about this on the server, I do want to say that we are all still fans of, this is for anyone who's listening right now, we are still fans of Purple Hyacinth, and we still appreciate the massive amounts of work that goes into Purple Hyacinth, right? But just because like we appreciate F so much, and we know like all of the hard work that goes into it, especially like F is a med student, like that's a lot, to write PH and then also, being college or university, doing medical school, it's a lot of work for her. But we do critique Purple Hyacinth out of like a respect for the comic and out of like a hope that it does improve, because we want to see it improve, and we've been following it for a very long time and we have a lot of devotion to it. But yeah, that's my little disclaimer moment.
There's no story out there that is going to have a perfect narrative or be completely flawless. I think every individual story is going to have its own hiccups, and especially a story that you are writing and planning over the course of several years, a lot can change. You learn a lot, you grow as authors, you grow as writers, as artists, and sometimes the end product that you have is not initially what you first planned, and that also will make some bumps in the road. So I think that's part of what also might have happened here too. But like Fwoot said, we're still fans of it. Absolutely. I still love it. I'm still going to read it every week. But also, if there's an issue and I get a chance to discuss it with a couple people as a fun discussion and people get to listen to it, then I'm going to do that too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we wouldn't be so passionate about it if we didn't really, really care about the story. I think that if we were indifferent, we would be like, whatever, it was slow or it was too fast. Like it matters to us because we were invested emotionally in these characters and in the story, and we wanted to see that payoff. We wanted to see them suffer. We really did, by the way. We just want more suffering.
I felt like there was a chance for like a whole like a cauldron of tears, and I did not feel that cauldron.
Yeah, I wanted to, before we move on from Tristan, because Meg, you were talking about this and it kind of reminded me of this. Over the hiatus, I thought about Tristan and Lauren's relationship a lot, because it's a relationship that hasn't had a ton of focus on it, but it's very much like a very present relationship there. And, because Tristan and Lauren were kind of going through the same grief at the same time when they lost Lauren's parents, and Lauren had also just lost Dylan. And so Tristan was kind of like one of the few people that could be there for her, who understood what she was going through, because, they just lost like their family. And, that hug in 64 that in the flashback is like very like sentimental, and then Tristan takes her under his wing and he raises her, right? Like that's a lot, for someone who's also just lost a lot of their family. Like, props to Tristan. Like he's done, like he did a lot of good things for Lauren, like in his family, but like it's very admirable to take on like this child who definitely like is going through a lot of things, and you're going through a lot of things, and to still be like, we're still family and I'm still here for you and I will always be here for you. And then, you know, Tristan and Lauren have a very good relationship, and we see these in tidbits over season 2. And then when I was reading 107 for the first time, it really reinforced the idea for me that, oh, hey, like the Tristan and Lauren relationship is going to be very important, because we saw Lauren reacting to her tearing Tristan's painting, right? And she felt so bad about it. But Tristan, like, even though Tristan was sad about it, he didn't want to like make her feel bad about it, and he lied about it, you know. And you know, he wanted to protect her feelings, right? Because she was a child. And that was like, oh my God, so heartfelt for me. And so
I thought, honestly, when I read that, I thought we were going to pop from the flashback to like, you know, addressing the Tristan, like Lauren. How come, this is what I was thinking, how come Lauren's first instinct was to think of, oh my goodness, Will and Kym think I'm dead, not Uncle Tristan thinks I'm dead? Like, how is that not your first thought?
I guess it's because she knew like Kym and Will were there. And I mean, Tristan was technically there, but like she wasn't like super interacting with him, you know, in the factory. But basically, like, I want to say that I thought we were going to have a lot of like introspection on Tristan's part, because there was a lot of speculation on whether Tristan knew Lauren was Loon or not. And because it is kind of obvious that he is that she is Loon, right? From Tristan's perspective, you know, he's the chief of police. It'd be kind of weird if, you know, oh, my niece isn't home tonight, and then the next morning there's a Loon file on your desk, you know, like
Yeah.
but
Ask any parent, they know their kid is sneaking out.
yeah, but it's not ever like, we never actually see Tristan like explicitly think about it. We see like this one scene in episode 59 where he's like, Lauren, what's your angle? And as he starts the murder board, but that's like it on like Tristan kind of, you know, really like looking into Lauren. I think he's a bit suspicious of her in episode 79 after the circus arc, where Lauren gets suspected of murder, but otherwise for Loon related things, I think that's like the closest we get. And 59 is a long time ago, especially for readers. If you're reading this weekly, like that's like over a year ago, definitely, maybe a year and a half. And so you know, I feel like this, I'll get into this more, but I feel like these initial episodes make a lot of jumps for the relationships. Like, we establish evidence or just scenes that the characters will be working off of, right? And these characters have to make conclusions from like these scenes or evidence. So like consider them like ingredients in a cake. But then when we come back to these characters, they already have the cake, they already have the conclusion, and we never actually see them make the conclusion or make the cake, you know.
I
And
like that analogy. That's
a good analogy.
I will get into this a lot with Kym and Kieran, because there is a brief Kieran mention, and I was thinking about this a lot the last couple days.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
So I agree about Tristan. For me, what struck me was like, I didn't feel, you mentioned that they have a good relationship, so I didn't feel like it was shown so much. Like, we just even eating together at breakfast, and Lauren seems a little artificial with Tristan. Like, she isn't opening up to him. So I kind of just like assume based on the story that they have a past and have a close relationship, but it's not shown.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like,
This
you know, they're
show
very
versus
much like
something.
constant in each other's lives, you know, like, because Tristan, like, he's the chief of police. The only relationships we really know about are like him and Lauren, and then him and Dawkins, and then Dawkins like never around, you know, like he only comes around for like the New Year's party, right? And other times they just like have to call each other. So
I'm curious though, because the excuse, sorry, and when you said that, it like brain went beep. They used the excuse that she was gonna go visit Dickon for that. That's where she had the car accident. So is he roped in now? Does he know? Because
yeah,
like,
that's what I was thinking.
No, you didn't tell me you were gonna come visit. What's that all about?
Like, no, imagine, like, I made a joke about this, but like, imagine you're Dawkins, and in this scenario, let's just also say you're the leader, right? And the leader does need to find out who Loon is, right? Because Loon poses an active threat to you. Imagine like you find out that your niece or your daughter goddaughter, that's it, that your goddaughter was supposedly coming to visit you the night of the factory explosion, and now she's suddenly injured, and you had no idea she was coming to visit you. Like, how suspicious would that be?
I just so the thing that I was thinking is more back in the same lines of like Kieran is apparently Superman, and has, I think I called him Wolverine when we were reacting because he heals like that quickly. Is anyone, after everything that Lauren's been accused of and how she's been kind of like in the limelight and everybody's been kind of suspicious of her and that kind of thing, is anyone going to actually believe the Karen story? Like, forget us as readers. What about the people in the world?
Yeah, I also wonder, like, I can't remember, but was there any physical evidence of this happening? Because I don't know, it'd be kind of weird, like, if you were like an officer in the precinct where the car crash happened, and like you just heard nothing about this, but there's a file about it, so it's like, oh, I guess, but like no one on patrol knows about this.
The nurses get a testimony. I feel like it'd be very easy to crack that wide open.
Yeah, and I think this is just like low-key an issue that's becoming with Purple Hyacinth, but everything's becoming a little too convenient. And I don't know, it was something I kind of noticed in season 2, and if I went back to my notes, I could probably find like examples of this, but I think just saying that in general this car crash was convenient is enough. And I don't
know. The plot armor is so thick that it's almost a Pixar mom.
Oh my god, Meg. Okay. But yeah, so like on the like we were talking about like
I'm gonna say Disney mom and then they're dead, but what's a Pixar mom?
Think
Pixar mom, they're notorious for being animated and with a certain body type is what the joke is.
Yeah. Think Elastigirl, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Right, moving on.
Anyways, but yeah, so like even though we're not really like, we don't really like see it a lot, the Tristan and Lauren relationship, it's very much like implied, you know, because like they also live together, you know, it's like it's there, but you have to look closely for it.
Implied or not, I would still like to see more of it regardless.
Yeah. And so like I was thinking, like, you know, before the season, I was like, oh man, imagine being Tristan right now and like you believe that your niece is Loon, and you literally just watch her explode. Like, and you can't even say anything to her, right? Because the person on the radio was Kieran, not Lauren, because Lauren couldn't expose her voice. And so you're watching this explosion, or like you're watching Loon run off to their deaths, right? And you can't say anything to your niece, right? Because she, like, you can't say goodbye to her. You can't even ask if it's her, right? Because you're in a professional setting, and you're surrounded by your coworkers, and Loon's identity needs to be a secret. And so there's just this small like marble of dread within you as you literally watch Loon die, right?
And I feel like they drew that well on his face. Like if he knew all that in that moment, you look at his face, that I think they drew that well. I would have just liked to see a conversation and with Tristan instead of like I would have rather Uncle Tristan come in the room and Lauren have the conversation with him rather than Will and Kym come in the room and Lauren have the conversation with them, I guess.
Yeah. So basically, like,
we need both conversations, but I feel like we missed out on one.
Yeah, but then it's like, you know, Tristan is like, the explosion happens and Tristan sees the explosion, and I'm looking at 106 right now. It's not obvious that he knew that they were alive, right?
Yeah, no.
It's not. And I feel like any, like, an inclination of this or just any hint to it would have made 109 make more sense, because when we come back to Tristan, he's like, oh yeah, I just knew. And I'm like,
we do
dude, how did you know? Like, it's obvious that he knew, but like, how did you come to that conclusion, bro? Like, slow down.
We do have that small moment, like episodes back, where he's kind of like staring at her board, like, Lauren, what are you getting yourself into? Like, I feel like that might have been part of it.
It's like the ingredients to the cake, but then he has the cake. How did he put those ingredients together?
Yeah,
you know,
we saw some eggs, we saw some flour, but we're missing everything else.
Yeah, and not only does he know that she's Loon, he knows that she escaped or survived somehow, and when no one else did. And I'm like, you were surrounded by APD officers.
Brutal looking.
How did everyone miss that, you know? And I guess that also could come down to maybe Tristan smarter than like, oh, we found these two bodies in proximity to where the explosion happened and they're all charred beyond recognition. They must be Loon.
Convenient, right?
It's so convenient. I'm like, and I also just think like, okay, I know the APD is like inefficient, but like this is a little too inefficient. Like I feel like there should be some more training going on here.
You know, aren't they watching your apartment? No, but not tonight.
Yeah. Oh my God, Bessie, do not get me started on that, because he was literally, I reread an episode and I don't remember which episode it was, but Lauren, no, I know which episode it was. It was 92 before they meet. It was 92 and Lauren was like, hey Kieran, we have to talk. And Kieran's like, okay, she's like, Kieran, we have to talk. Can we meet at your apartment tonight? And Kieran's like, no, apartment's not safe. It's like probably being watched or something. We have to be in the cave. I can't. Like, I guess like they had nowhere else to go. But then this is why a lot of people theorize that Loon would explore the tunnel system and probably end up somewhere like within the tunnel system, or Kieran would bring Lauren to the doctor instead of like the doctor coming to them at the apartment, because the apartment is just not safe. However, this would make sense. I'm just going to pull out the devil's advocate card here as a joke. This would make sense if the leader already knew that Kieran and Lauren were Loon, because the leader orchestrated Loon, and so Bitcher in theory.
Or we have the person protecting Lauren theory.
And that's also why the doctor doesn't say anything, because the doctor just already knew they were Loon because the leader told him, you know.
Yeah, that feels like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're fixing a plot hole by creating other plot holes.
Bestie, I'm fixing this plot hole by sharing one of the greatest theories to ever exist. I'm kidding.
I strongly disagree. Like, you keep saying that like we're on the same page, and I'm just like, I don't know what book you're in. Like,
oh, okay. So Bestie, basically, okay, it's this theory where the leader ordered Kieran to create Loon.
Oh no, I am very well aware of the theory. I have read it in detail when you first came up with it, so I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Okay.
I still disagree, and it's not happening. Do not cast that doubt on my Kieran. I still love him regardless.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess this is also the time to talk about the doctor before we get like super into this episode, because the doctor is like
who the doctor was, and it's just a random.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's a random. He gets like we see like this one tiny face, you know, of him, and that's like it. And then he pulls out the bullets and he leaves, and he's like, yeah, he just knows better than to talk about the Hyacinth. And I guess we'll probably get the answer to why he does this like in the future, but like reading this as a linear story, it's not satisfying. It's just convenient, you know.
I'm just like, wow, Dylan got old.
Because I feel like about in this premiere specifically,
we'll be buttoned together. It's cool.
Yeah, I feel like in this premiere specifically, there are things that happen that are very convenient that should be raising questions, but because we don't really explore these characters, we don't actually get to see the questions that should be getting raised. And this is a reference to, again, Kym and Kieran, so I'll have to get to that later.
Okay, so I guess let's continue, right? Just after Will asks all these questions, he's like, I don't believe this. Ring, right? The phone rings. He runs over and he's like, hello. And obviously we know like that this is when Lauren was calling before. So the next shot we have is Lauren's house. And it's the window, and Lauren's like hobbling around under Kym. She spots Will and Kym coming up the stairs, and she like looks like she's running towards the door while stumbling.
I want to mention that the phone she calls is Kym's phone,
right? Which
is low key. Like, I know like she was concerned about Kym, but it's still again like Will getting a little screwed over. And we were talking about this before the podcast about how I think we were talking about this before the podcast. I genuinely do not know, but you know, Will just doesn't have a lot of focus emotionally.
Well,
actually, I think we did talk about this on the podcast.
I'll play a little devil's advocate. My turn here, as far as like her obsession over Kym versus Will.
Yeah,
She
I think
doesn't know what Will does or doesn't know. She knows for sure Kym knows something, so I think that's what her mind might be going to is I've got to take care of Kym first because she's freaking out. Will might be, but I don't know that for sure. I know for sure Kym is freaking out, so that might be the thought process.
yeah, but I guess it's like she is still assumed dead by both Kym and Will when the point she calls
Yeah.
her. So it's like I don't know. It's just like yeah, she picks Kym to call, and it reminds me of. And I wonder if just Will's gonna have issues over this because it's kind of like how his mom remembers Raphael, but not him.
So
And
I actually
so
think this whole thing
it's
fit
like,
into me with Will's big problem, which is that he's always overlooked and his needs are not addressed and he doesn't take care of his own needs either. So to me, it just was like, yeah, of course, Will just gets the short end of the stick because that's poor Will's life. And I think that is really something that he can change over the course of the story and step up to the plate.
I'm gonna mute myself and mute my video in a second though. Okay. I'm listening though.
So I think that he, his challenge and his arc is step up to the plate and be more assertive and take charge of his life, right? And all that. So to me, to see him get overlooked, it's like, yep, that's what happens to Will.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if it's like a meta ironic thing at this point where it's like, yeah, Will's just like because Will's character arc is kind of like when we're introduced to his family, it's kind of like he's always getting compared to like his brother who's like gone and then his mom like doesn't remember his existence or something or just thinks he's Raphael, and then the story kind of does the same thing by also like neglecting the exploration of his feelings, the exploration of his thoughts, specifically in like the later part of season 2 regarding Lou and Lauren, and then again in episode 106. So I don't know if it's purposeful or if he's just like as like an ironic like this happens to him in comic and it happens to him as a character like in how he's written, and so like but that'd be so sad. I would feel so bad for Will if he could like not get a break within the comic but also not get a break in how he's written. Like damn dude. He deserves so much better.
I hope they do pay attention to him. I hope that he does end up having some kind of whatever completion to his arc, whether it's a tragic or a happy one, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like right now Will's arc is having a bit of like a dip, I guess, because he is going through the motions of all of these events, like the factory arc and then, this phone call and, Lauren's death, but there's just hardly any exploration on what he specifically thinks on it.
Right.
Just in comparison to Kym, I guess, because like Kym, Will got the short end of the stick in the factory arc. Like the entire focus, like emotional focus, was between Kym and Lauren and the suspense of whether Kym will actually get that confirmation of Lauren being Loon, and this comes to kind of like a bit of a climax and close in 103. But again, Will doesn't have his 103 episode. He just figures it out by Kym trying to yell Lauren's name.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so Lauren comes stumbling. Kym spots her through the window, balcony, whatever, and she throws away the cane and stumbles to the door. Will screams, "Kym, be careful!" and slams open the door. And Lauren's face is like she seems very pained. Will says, "Lauren." Kym inhales and then whacks into Lauren. I thought she was hugging her. It looks like she's punching her also. She's violently assaulting her.
I thought it was a punch. I thought it was one of those things that were like, how dare you punch.
Yeah, she's clearly very emotional. And Will's like, Kym, she has a cane, because she does. But Kym is upset. And Lauren says, yeah, it's fine. I deserve that. And Kym screams, why didn't you tell me? Which, yes, justified. I would be very betrayed if my best friend did not tell me that she was Loon.
Honestly, no, but this is something that I just had an issue with Kym's character in the factory arc, is that Kym feels entitled to Lauren being Loon. And she really isn't, because Kym season 2 set up Kym as like, yeah, she was this, you know, funny character in season 1, but she also has a lot of nuance and a lot of depth, and she's a very intelligent character who can make conclusions about these characters. You know, like she sees Will, she sees Will get, you know, really upset over Raphael in the circus arc, and you know, she has very high emotional intelligence, and so she's able to comfort him after that. And in episode 77, and that's just, you know, one great example of how smart Kym actually is. But then the factory arc is frustrating for me to read Kym's character because she actively delays Loon and Will and herself from evacuating a building with enough nitroglycerin to blow an entire neighborhood. And I feel like, Kym, like, you are smarter than this. And I guess like people have said that, you know, she was more going like off like, you know, her selfishness, right? And you know, it's a flaw in that she like really wanted to know whether Lauren was Loon, and she was becoming desperate. But we just didn't really see that kind of desperation prior to the factory arc, so it didn't really make a lot of sense for them to just now introduce it, because again, that's just like convenient in how inconvenient it is for Lauren.
Well, I think it's one of those things where a character makes a decision that makes good emotional sense and good suspense sense, but not good narrative sense. Yeah. And I think you can't always have your cake and eat it too, because we're now only using cake analogies now.
But like, just for like Kym, it's like I don't really understand how she can feel like entitled to Lauren being Loon, because that's very much like she's very much trying to uncover Loon. In
I don't know if
the late
90s is the right word.
I don't know if entitled's the right word either, but like she's at least referring to here where she's like, why didn't you tell me? Because
I think she might be a bit obsessed slightly, which I mean, if I were her, I would probably be obsessed too.
Yeah, but I just like, I don't know why Kym can ask Lauren why Lauren didn't tell her when Kym was also supposed to be actively investigating Loon and supposed to like snitch on Loon or snitch on her coworkers to Hermann.
Yeah, like, why did you think I didn't tell you?
Sorry?
I said, like, why do you think I didn't tell you? Like,
yeah. But like,
Lauren should have trusted her not to tell, you know?
But like, to this, Lauren just nervously smiles, and it's hard for me because while I think it's good that Kym's character has flaws, Kym also by like, you know, trying to arrest Loon, which in my eyes was like a selfish decision, because she didn't have to listen to Hermann in the factory arc when Hermann said to arrest Loon, because she was the one who should have made the call that, you know, the situation wasn't safe and their priority should have been to evacuate the building, right? Because you know, by staying inside, they all risk, you know, being blown up and dying. But she still makes the active choice, like, yeah, I'm going to arrest Lauren now. And in the following episodes, it's very much fueled by her trying to unmask Lauren, because in episode 99, when she's chasing Lauren around the factory, the episode ends with Kym trying to unmask Lauren rather than Kym just trying to arrest Lauren and then unmask Lauren, you know, once Lauren was actually like in handcuffs or something. But so Kym's action and decision to arrest, and then Will, we don't know whether Will agreed with it or not, because Will just doesn't have that focus. That delayed Loon from evacuating the building. And when I do want to note that when the arrest happens, either Kieran or Lauren makes a direct statement to say that their priority is to evacuate the building. So they were trying to evacuate. But yeah, so because Kym delays the evacuation, that allows time for the PS backups to arrive, and then that just snowballs into, you know, episode 100 and 101 and 102, you know, where Lucas gets like severely injured and Lauren gets shot, and it's all because they weren't able to evacuate the building in time, which allowed for the PS recruits, or not recruits, for the PS backups. And so if they were able to evacuate the building, then then, you know, Loon wouldn't have been put in a situation where they had to, like, you know, get stuck in the basement with the bomb and then basically presumably sacrifice their lives to like stop the nitro from blowing up the neighborhood. And I thought I was hoping that Kym would feel guilty or accountable for this, you know, because her single action of deciding to go through with that arrest, which was a selfish action, that was inspired by her obsession to get her confirmation on whether Lauren was Loon, that choice got kind of, with a lot of other things, got Lauren presumably dead. And so I thought, and that was like sort of a parallel to Lauren with Dylan, and 105 really tries to exemplify this parallel, which is like Kym's reaction to the explosion. It's very much like Lauren's from the season 1 finale. And Lauren felt guilty over Dylan's death, and you know, I just thought that that's what Kym was gonna have because of all of these reasons, you know.
Interesting. So yeah, I never thought, like, Kym clearly doesn't show any guilt, and I wouldn't have thought. I think the whole situation was so like emotional for her. I don't think she sat down and thought it through and gave herself delaying things.
And I guess like that's just what's here, you know, because there's just not time for this to happen, you know, for Kym to sit down and to explore it. And I thought when I was reading this premiere for the first time, and I got to I think it was 109 where Kym sits down and is in therapy, right? I thought that, oh, that's how we're going to explore it, right? That's how we're going to explore these feelings, because, you know, therapy really forces someone to like sit down and reevaluate all of these things. And I say this as someone who is currently in therapy, like it does like change it does change your perspective on a lot of issues. And but for Kym to have this very sincere and genuine outlook, she needs to be speaking under like the assumption that Lauren is dead, because she's dealing with the consequences of the factory, that being Lauren's death. And you know, how someone talks about their actions is going to be a lot different if there's a loss in it or not. Because when Kym initially goes to therapy, she is operating under a loss, that being Lauren, but she doesn't have that loss anymore. She doesn't have that consequence of losing Lauren. And in the episode 107 podcast, I brought this up to you, Mindy, that Kym and Will losing Lauren is the same as Lauren and Kieran losing Loon. And it took almost a whole season for Lauren and Kieran to get Loon back, you know, and to operate as Loon. But it took Kym and Will 6 episodes to get Lauren back. One of them not being an episode related to them at all.
Right. Yeah.
I guess bringing off of what she was saying though, I guess if I was to pick a character in between Will and Kym that would be dealing with guilt or blaming themselves, it would be Will. And since he's the sergeant, he's the superior officer in this situation, everything that happened, I would have assumed that Will is the one that would have blamed himself. Will's the one that would have been struggling with the guilt, not Kym, even if she did reflect on her actions. I just think they're different in that way. And Will is the one that would have wanted to take on the responsibility, and that was an opportunity to explore, you know, how not only the loss of his, you know, dearest friend, but also I didn't handle my subordinates correctly. Like, I messed up in this situation, even though technically maybe it was Kym's mistake. Will would have looked at it as his mistake.
Yeah.
And that wasn't explored at all. So I think it would have been, if they were going to explore it from that angle, I think it would have been more appropriate to explore it from Will rather than Kym. But that wasn't done. So
yeah, I think that definitely would have been a lot of I definitely agree, like that would have been a really interesting angle to take. Overall, I find it like difficult to explore the emotional consequences of the factory arc now that they've reunited, because Kym and Will don't have that loss anymore. They don't have that consequence of Lauren not being in their lives anymore. That consequence, which was very much partly brought on by themselves in a self-inflicted consequence because of that arrest, which snowballed, you know. And Lauren, I don't think I really expected Lauren to hold them accountable to it for that like arrest, but Lauren just doesn't care, and she's happy to have her friends back, which is wholesome. I'll say it's wholesome, and it's sweet. It's a very sweet moment.
The reunion would have been more earned if we had had more anguish.
Yeah, exactly. Like I see this as Kym and Will getting rewarded for just kind of screwing Loon over because they don't have to deal with the consequences long term. And in fact, as we'll see a bit later on, they get rewarded with insight on Loon.
Yeah, so let's get to that. Basically, they hug, and then they get an explanation. She says, Lauren narrates, I told Will and Kym everything, and we have the crackling fire, right? It's like a home environment, about our search for the seventh apostle, how we hoped it would lead us to the leader. And, you know, they're listening, they're like incredulous about my parents being apostles, what Kieran told me on that bridge, the abduction of 2 children from the train station. The place where I found the hat never made sense to me, and I have been right, which that is a new detail. We never spoke about that before. And if only we had looked harder back then. I told my dear friends everything. Well, almost. And then we get back to real life where she says, I escaped the factory through a broken window. I took advantage of the confusion to run away unnoticed. And Kym asks a new phantom partner, and she says he didn't survive. He was holding the bomb when it went off. And Will says, Lauren, I'm sorry about your partner. So, you know, she has a face and she like looks away, right? And she says his death saved so many other lives. What he would have wanted. He was a hero to the end.
Yeah. I wonder if this will ever be brought up because I saw some people pointing it out. But Kym actually saw Lauren holding the bomb like 5 seconds before it went off. So I wonder if like Kym's ever gonna bring that up, you know? But also like why like tell Lauren or why tell Kym and Will like all of these details about like Loon's operations and then like not the tunnels? Because that seems like something that could be really helpful in understanding Loon. And then like if she was willing to put Kym and Will, actually I'll get to this in a second when we talk about like the partner.
Okay, so Kym's like, oh God, Lauren, what did you get yourself into? We thought you were dead this whole time. And she's like, I know, I'm so sorry, Kym. I called you as soon as I could. And we'll ask, what was his name again, your partner? She says, Thomas Shepard. And Kym's like, Thomas Shepard? And she pushes an ID across, Lauren pushes an ID, she's like, this guy. And it's the guy named Thomas Shepard. And just says it was issued 12th of December 23, and it's a picture of a random guy.
Where did she get this ID from? Like, I just now realized, like, where did she get this ID from?
She
got it from one of the Christies that got fried in the factory.
Oh,
okay.
I have no idea. That was my idea. Maybe.
Like, and I was just thinking, what if she got it from Kieran's forger friend? But we don't know. So.
And Kym's like, huh, but this entire time I thought he was, and Lauren cuts her off. She's like, I can't tell you any more about his role in the Phantom side. Anything you know about Loon will put us all in danger. I can just tell you.
Yeah, okay, so I don't understand that line because she's like, she literally just tells Kym and Will everything that they've discovered, you know? And then she's like, actually, I can't tell you anything about Loon because it's going to put you in danger. And I'm like, girl, what? It's so like, I read this and like, I remember reading this and I was like, are you serious? Like, okay, I don't want to be like too like sarcastically negative on this, but I like, like I'm laughing at myself because when I was first reading this, I was like, are you serious, Lauren? It's like, because my initial feelings was like, isn't this like a little contradictory?
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, because if literally like she doesn't putting like or telling Kym and Will, who are partners at this point, doesn't put them at risk from the Phantom side, you know, or doesn't put them at more risk from the Phantom side. It's more already the way she told them like everything they found out from Loon's operations that puts them at risk already, and Lauren holding this out doesn't put them at more or less risk. It's just a matter of like what Kieran wants them to know, you know.
Right, it's odd that she's deciding to tell them everything rather than just like being as vague as possible. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know,
because
like, are they gonna now continue investigating with Will and Kym? Like, is she gonna, because I'm sure they're gonna wanna continue this line of investigation,
Mhm.
right? If she's telling them all the new details that she knows, they can't sit on that information and do nothing about it. So what's the path
it's
forward?
just the reason Lauren couldn't tell anyone she was living before was because it put herself and the people around her in active danger, right? If the Phantom Scythe were ever investigating it, right? You know, but I guess now that Kym will have one piece of information about Lynn, that being one of the identities, it's safe for them to get almost everything else. Like that, because that just puts them in more danger, and I don't really understand Lauren's reasoning here. Because I guess like she would want to explain it to Kym and Will.
What I guess I don't understand is like, could she have not told them everything? Like, what's the point of telling them now? What's different than, like, apparently she's got a perfect cover story. Why does she need to, if she thinks, like you said, if it's so dangerous, why bring them in even now? I feel like that just makes more problems. And if she's trying to protect Kieran, this is not the way to do it. And I guess I feel like what's the plan? Like, we feel very lost from that standpoint, I guess. Like, forget the timing of things. Like, where do we go from here? Like, how I thought it was going to be, and maybe this is my expectations ruining my experience because the expectations and then what happened doesn't line up. But I was honestly genuinely anticipating kind of like a civil war situation where Lauren and Kieran are kind of isolated, trying to figure things out because everybody thinks they're dead. And then Will and Kym are still on the side of the police, still having to abide by the law and go by the book. And so that puts them in conflict with each other. I thought we were going to have, that sort of conflict, not, okay, everybody's on the same ship, let's go.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, this happened so quickly for me. It's still like kind of hard to process. And I think it's just how much focus we actually got in Kym and Will for Lauren to feel the need to tell them all of this. Because we got episode 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, and 111. And Kym is present in 3 of those episodes. Will is present in 2 of those episodes. In Kym's third, or technically second appearance, it's literally just one scene and not much depth besides the fact that we got to confirm that Kym probably went to therapy after Dana's death. But, and then like Lauren, she gets 108, 109, and 111, all focusing on her, which is a lot, which is like drastically different from like the amount of time that like Kym and Will get to explore their feelings post-factory, because they get 106 and then they're basically just brought back at 100 and in 111 with not very much in between that transition time. So we literally go from Kym and Will completely like grieving the loss of Lauren, right, and Kym having these very traumatic like flashbacks or dreams or something, and then the next time we see her, it's a very quick therapy scene, and the next time where nothing is really explored, and then the next time we see her, she's basically learning all of this about Loon. Like, I feel like we skipped some steps,
Yeah, I feel like I missed some episodes.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
but
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but like I was gonna say something. But after the end of this, like, and you're gonna read the end of it, but it makes like this big declaration at the end of 111 before we get to the cave scene. But go ahead and finish that, and I will do my input then.
Yeah, and we have about half hour left. So, so she says, she thinks to herself, they know Kieran, and everyone knows at least one of them must have been part of Phantom Scythe. They've been obligated to report him, and I can't put them in that position. Besides, he's always protected me. Now it's my turn. So she sighs, and she tries to divert attention by joking. And she's like, so, do you think I look lively enough to show up for work? Dancing around, I could walk, I just can't use my arm. It's funny. They're like, you crazy bitch.
Oh, wait. Mindy, I wanted to talk about, sorry, I should have brought this up earlier, but I wanted to talk about Kym knowing Kieran is Loon, because it's very similar to the Tristan situation where there's all the pieces for the cake, right?
Right.
And then she has the cake and
right, what's she gonna do with
sorry,
that?
I accidentally muted myself. Like she doesn't, like, how does she come to that conclusion? And I actually reread all of the factory arc the other day just to check to make sure that I was right and like Kym does not suspect Kieran, or because I think the moment Kym is most suspicious of Kieran is episode 63. I haven't reread all of season 2 in a while, so I might be wrong. But in the factory arc, at least, when Kym is trying to figure out Lauren's identity as Loon, no mention of Kieran anywhere. There's no thought of Kieran as an archivist, as her boyfriend. You know, it's just not brought up anywhere. Kym has, well, this has been a fun double date line, but we genuinely do not know if she's referring to Kieran in this because she thinks it's Lauren, or whether she's just like, you know, Loon is a duo, Soleil is a duo, you know, double date. You know, it's just Kym does not have any like very clear suspicions of Kieran. And
I feel like there were more crumbs for, like, if we were to go back and look, I feel like there were more crumbs for Kym to just kind of put 2 and 2 together with Kieran than there were for Tristan to figure out Loon. Like, I feel like we have more to go on.
Yeah, but it's still like, you know, more ingredients to a cake doesn't automatically bake the cake. So I think because, I mean, I think I mentioned this earlier that
was less of a big jump for me, I guess.
Yeah, so it's very obvious. I agree. It's very obvious for both Tristan and Kym for these conclusions that, yeah, they should have come to these conclusions very easily. But we don't see them come to these conclusions. We speculated that they would come to these conclusions, but we missed the scene where they do come to these conclusions. And I think a detriment to that is that a lot of questions should be brought up for Kym when she comes to her conclusion that Kieran is the partner of Loon. You know, like questions about how did Lauren and Kieran meet, you know, like why did Kieran, if he's Loon, apply to the, like, join the office if they already had an ABD member in Loon? And like, what does Kieran do in the Phantom Scythe? And I guess like Kym kind of like, and I guess like Lauren kind of like tries to cut off that conversation. But if we saw Kym have an individual scene where she comes to this conclusion before, like, you know, the scene where she tries to bring it up to Lauren, then she would be aware of these questions at least. And, you know, if Kim's supposed to be like a really smart character, there was a lot of speculation that she would figure out Kieran was the purple hyacinth easy because, you know, she figures he's Loon. And then what was the last time Lauren had a very like direct interaction with a PS member? That would be, you know, the purple hyacinth. So I don't know. I feel like Kym should be asking questions, or Kym should have questions, but we don't know what kind of questions Kym has because these questions would have come up in a scene where Kym comes to this conclusion, but we don't have the scene where Kym comes to the conclusion. We just see Kym be given these bits of evidence in season 2 and then her having a conclusion in season 3.
We might have a future scene though where she follows up on
yeah
that.
I guess that's less of a problem for me and more of a problem of, like you were saying, these questions should already be being asked, and that just goes back to what we were talking about, I think, before we started recording the podcast. The stakes that felt so real before, it starts to feel like they're less of a big deal because these questions should be getting asked, these deductions should be getting made. I don't even really care that I get to see Kym have a moment where she, like, you know, puts her hands together and thinks about all of this. It should be happening regardless, and
exactly.
And it makes me feel like the tension that's being built up is just kind of construed, that it's not real. The risks aren't real. If Kym's so smart in this way, why is she dumb in this way? And it feels patchy, I guess.
And also, like, why does Kym bring this up in front of Will? Because Kym is one thing, but Will is a completely other thing. And Will did not have the same suspicions of Lauren as Kym did. And even in this panel where Kym brings up Kieran, Will glances at her, so maybe it's going to be brought up later, but he doesn't really seem to care within the next few episodes. Next few panels. Like, it's just like they just completely move on. So like he glances at Kym, but you know, there's not really
from Hermann.
There's not an.
He didn't follow up on the thread where she said, "Oh, maybe it's Kieran." But I do think that could come up.
I think it could come up later, but following
I hope
this,
so.
Will does not
I
make
hope so.
an indication that he was like surprised by this information, even though for Will, this should be very surprising, you know?
Well, he also saw her and Lauren go out together. If you remember, he's the one who saw them.
Mhm.
So maybe I assume they will talk about it in the future.
Yeah, but it's like, why isn't this stuff established now? That's my question, because I've seen this discussion a lot in the server, and everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people are like, well, they're probably gonna, you know, circle back and come back to this. For example, a scene that a lot of people think they're gonna come back to is Tristan and Lauren's reunion. But I'm like, why don't we just have it now and keep the story like linear, you know? Because it's just like, you know, a flashback where Kym realizes, like, what's the point of, why does the scene where like Kym realizes it's Kieran have to be a flashback instead of something that just happened before the scene? Like, that's my question.
Mhm.
And maybe something important gets established in that, because it's a flashback. But I'm just, as someone who is consuming the story linearly right now, and we're going from point A to point B to point C, whatever, why are we taking out point B and making it come after point C?
It feels like we want to have our tension, our stakes, but we still want everybody to be friends at the same time. And it feels like they're trying to have both. And it doesn't feel like, for me anyways, like it's, like I said, I don't, the fact that I'm not seeing panels where, you know, they're putting all the pieces together doesn't bother me so much as the fact that narratively it doesn't seem to matter, I guess. If it mattered, maybe I could get over you know, I don't really care seeing the panels where she puts all the thoughts together, but I want it to matter narratively. I want it to matter to the plot. I don't like that it's just kind of pushed aside because we want everybody to be friends, I guess.
Yeah, for me, the reason that I want these scenes is because I don't want to be relying on speculation as a fan. You know, as someone who's reading this comic, we shouldn't be relying on our speculation to fill in the gaps that we have here. Like, you know, it's just like,
Right.
why is, I don't know, it's kind of frustrating.
There needs to be an even side of both. You need to be able to expect your readers to, you know, put together things on their own, but then you also need to be able to not play with them, like give them teases, like whether or not a character knows an information or not. Like I feel like that
yeah, exactly, because there's a difference for me between like treating your readers like with respect and like, you know, treating your readers as like intellectual people, right, versus leaving out the establishment of ideas and expecting the readers to fill in those gaps, you know. Because with here, it's not, because with Kym suspecting Kieran as the other person of Loon, it's not very well established. She has suspicions of Kieran in season 2, but especially in the factory arc, she doesn't think that the other person there is Kieran at all. Like it just never crosses her mind.
Which doesn't track for me, because if she's intelligent in that way, why wouldn't she be intelligent in the other way? Is what
for me, it would just be like an indication to the readers that, hey, this is an idea that we want to establish in this story, you know, and it will be brought up later, but there's no establishment of this idea, really. Like we have Kym being suspicious of Kieran, but there's a difference between Kym being suspicious of Kieran and her fully on suspecting Kieran. And we have to, and as readers, because this idea isn't established in a scene, we have to fill in that gap of her transition from those two ideas.
So speaking of suspicion, yeah, I kind of want to make sure we finish on time.
No, this is my last thing, and then I know we got to finish up. I have to go too. If it's well known that Loon was at the factory and Loon is possibly dead, why wasn't the PS immediately in contact with Kieran? Because the whole reason why he's at the PD is to investigate Loon. So if everybody thinks Loon was at the factory and Loon's been blown up, what do they want him to do there? Like, wouldn't they get in contact him quite quickly? Like, what information do you have on this? But no, they don't touch him at all. They're left. I guess maybe they're too busy with the nitroglycerin, which is entirely possible. But if this whole thing with Loon is blown up, what is Kieran doing? What do his bosses think he's doing?
I do hear that, but I do think that Will definitely has to come up. I and the Phantom Side has to be in touch with him. So I do think that since they came out with 6 episodes, which is actually a lot, we're saying that we want like longer episodes for Will and Kym, right? So I do think that it could be pushed off, right? It doesn't have to be enough for 6 episodes, but because it's only like, let's say, the 3rd day after, so we could still see. I think we will. We must see.
Right. And I hope we do. I'm not saying like it's an awful thing that we haven't seen it yet, but I'm saying we should.
Yeah.
I think we definitely should. It needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now, in terms of Lauren, she says, I feel like the longer I stay away, the more Hermann will think his suspicions were right. Injuries weren't supposed to be too bad after all. And Will's like, your car accident is believable. Trust me. Please sit down. I don't know if I should be relieved or concerned that Tristan pulled it off so well. So yeah, we were just saying, maybe not so believable, but according to Will, it's believable. So
yeah, like I don't know. I this is just like a side note. It's Tristan. I don't know. Like, yeah, him covering for Loon was good, but it's also like, he's covering for Lauren. He's coming for Loon because it's his niece, and so it's just more police bias. And I don't know if they're going to bring it up later, because Tristan, even in the past, has offered like, I can reinstate your position as a detective.
Well, I think that Will and Kym didn't agree that they should out Loon. They were like, well, Loon's doing good work. So I think it is portrayed as Herman's obsession. So the fact that Tristan wanted to protect Loon, I think that it reflects the sentiments of probably a lot of people in town who are happy that Loon is operating.
Yeah, I think just Tristan is shouldering Lauren from consequences, like, because Lauren losing her detective position was her consequence, right? And he wanted to free her of that consequence by giving her the position back. And then here, Tristan actually does free her of consequence by using his position to file that car crash incident, even though Lauren should be facing consequences for being Loon, and I guess that's something we can talk about at the end of this podcast.
Right. It's a good question on whether he would have done that for anyone else because he wants to, protect Loon and find out more and whatever, or if it's just because it was.
Well, of course, he knows her partner is part of the PS. He has to know that. I mean, or at least be able to easily assume it. So, how willing is he to get himself in the mucky to protect Lauren from facing her consequences? Because now he's involved himself by just working with Kieran, and that's now already a mark on him. He's already involved now, regardless of helping. If it was just, forget about whether it was just helping Lauren cover this up. Now he's literally involved with a PS member, even if he doesn't know who they are. He has to know that they're Phantom Side.
And there has to be a conversation between Tristan and Lauren. I mean, he's got to have a sit down and be like, okay, Lauren, tell me what's going on. Like, what are we doing now?
Can we do like a prediction? Like, should it be reasonable to expect that conversation within the next 10 chapters?
Yeah, of course.
Honestly, I don't know. I'll explain.
10 chapters is a lot.
I know 10 chapters is a lot, and I think I will say I think the possibility of a flashback to Tristan and Lauren's reunion is very likely. But again, I just wonder, why couldn't we have this scene before this episode, Because by the time that we see Lauren at home, it probably means that Tristan has like reunited with her before, right? And
I would think he would advise her on whether or not she should talk to her friends about this. Like, hey, keep your mouth shut, or no, you can tell them.
Yeah, I just, because Tristan doesn't know the state of his niece, and whether she's like safe or not. And I'm pretty sure he asks Kieran that in 109, and he is very clearly concerned for her. So it just confuses me why we didn't get that reunion scene, and I get, again, also like, how did Tristan know she was alive? Like, there's just a lot of questions brought up about Tristan and like how he knew she was Loon, but we just don't get that by this reunion scene. And I think it's just
after the reunion scene is what I want to hit to before we have to go. Just one last thing.
Yeah.
So
let's continue. So she's like, oh, your maid also deserves a raise despite the number of times we called to try coming here. She refused to let us in or talk to you.
And I think that's
happening for you, really fine.
I want to say that I tried to make sense of why we didn't get a reunion scene with Tristan, and for a while I thought it was because of Will's comment saying Tristan wasn't unreachable, but because of this comment here about how Kiwi tried to call the house a bunch of times, I think it was just Will trying to contact Tristan a lot, and Tristan not being able to answer because he can't tell them whether or where Lauren was. But Tristan's like relationship to Kiwi does not indicate whether he was actually around for Lauren to have a reunion with him.
Yeah. We don't know if he just wouldn't talk to Will and Kym or if he was physically not there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which would be interesting if he wasn't, I'm assuming that'll get picked up on. So he says Hermann has no choice but to keep his suspicions to himself. As far as everyone else is concerned, the only thing left of Loon are charred remains. Don't push yourself, Lauren. She's like, but we've done enough for now. Because of you, we removed all the nitro from the basement and the army is moving it to a safe storage site. We also arrested the factory owner, Elvira Lloyd, we have a flashback of her, and a couple of phantom stragglers. We might even stand a chance at extracting some information from them, which for sure is going to be picked up. If you don't listen, I would have no choice but to expose your identity, Lauren, which is a lie. He's never going to do that. And she's like, this is not fair. He just little smiles. And then they hear a rumble outside. And it's like, do you hear that? Sounds like there's a gathering not too far. So we see people on the street and we see Kym, Will, and Lauren in her pajamas going out to see what's going on. And we have narration. From that day on, nothing was the same. They were exchanging worried looks. I entrusted my secret, my life to them. They're coming down the street. And we see the crowd gathered in front of that statue that we saw before. And the city now knew the threat was real. And we have Hermann, I think, right? Is that Hermann?
Yeah.
But he's announcing to the crowd, the two vigilantes known as Loon are presumed dead since the incident at the Lloyd glass factory. In light of recent events and for reasons of national security, the royal court has instituted the following measures effective immediately. And now we have narration and implemented drastic new measures to keep its people safe, what we heard last time. As of today, a curfew has been put in place. No citizen can be outside of their residence past 10 p.m. without a valid reason, but I would only learn too late. There will be day and night increased police presence in public places. Officers will have the right to stop and interrogate whoever appears suspicious.
That new thing is going to cause a lot of trouble because, or it probably will, because in this narrative, I would guess that lower class citizens are going to be the ones who are targeted by this, and they're going to be suspicious in quotations just because of, their social status. And I did want to make a point that we do see this in real life, and there's a lot of parallels in PH with how the police treat lower class citizens in the comic to how the police will treat minorities in at least America. And they're like, people will get targeted by police in America because of their skin tone and because they're Black, and that just makes them inherently, in quotations, suspicious to the police.
Yeah, the listener's narration showed that even small victories always came with a price, and that's the price. It's the stripping of their civil liberties.
Yeah.
And this is what Dakin was fighting against, right? But the monarchy and the cabinet, they're coming down with the same heavy hand. They're like, let's just be stricter and stricter because we have to try to prevent terrorism without really attributing the root causes of the terrorism.
Yeah, but basically, like the thing with officers having the right to stop anyone, it's like the PH equivalent of racial profiling.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good.
Yeah, so that's gonna. I hope there are consequences with that.
I'm interesting. Yeah, like what you're saying. I'm hoping that they play off of that. I hope they do something with it, that we don't say this could happen or this is a parallel of real life. I'm hoping we actually see it in the comic rather than just have a conversation starter. Like, I hope we see like an actual event in the story referencing back to that, because I mean that's once again consequences, like we were talking about. You do this will happen, and I'm tired of seeing the let's do this and this could happen, but it doesn't actually happen. You know what I'm saying? Like the discussion of what could happen and not the actually happening of the happening. And what I wanted to end off with, this narration that from like this moment on, everything changed. And that's how kind of like the episode ends before that, big bomb drops. Was I felt like from this moment on, everything changed. That line should have been right before the factory blew up. Like if there was something to change everything, it should have been that. Not, and because that's what started it all. That's what starts the new policies going forward. So if we were going to have this narration, it needed to be like 10 episodes ago. And that's for me where I put it down, and I was like, why do I feel this way? Why do I not feel like as excited as I want to be or fulfilled as I want to be? And I think that's just an important part of the pacing. You have to know when to drop the lines or where to change the direction of the story. And I thought it was going to change at the end of season 2. And as we're coming and wrapping up here, it doesn't feel like we've gone like a little U-turn. We haven't like gone a 90-degree angle. We haven't changed roads. We just kind of yielded right is what it feels like. And
sorry. I want to say that like from that day on, nothing was the same line. I agree. It felt kind of like hard to read for me because the main difference that Lauren has gone through in the aftermath of the factory is just Kym and Will are in on her secret. And I wrote a bit about this and I sent you guys that writing, and I know we didn't really have time to go over it, but in that that's where I got the comparison between Kiwi losing Lauren to Lockie losing Loon. And it's basically just like I want to add that there is a status quo in between that the characters themselves cause. So in season 1, the status quo change is, episode 43. And so Lauren and then Kieran joining the APD. And so Lauren has to call off Loon. That is the change. Okay. And so then in season 2, they have to grapple with that change. And this is very much like the characters themselves dealing with these small changes, not like how it influences the overall larger world. And then Lockie has to spend the whole season repairing that relationship. And then the status quo change from season 2 to season 3 was that Loon is dead, and Kym and Will have to now grapple with Lauren being gone. And again, I thought it was going to last a lot longer than it did. And, Lauren, I think, should have actually faced consequences, because it's like here, it's like, yeah, Lauren's facing consequences and nothing's going to be the same or whatever. But does she? Like,
nothing's going to be the same for the people that were at Hollis.
Yeah.
That's the impression I got.
Do we want to address that last scene before we sign off? Because I do.
I do want to make a small point about consequences. Sorry. Specifically with Kieran and Tristan, because Kieran came in episode 109 and alleviated Lauren from any consequences she would face in her professional life for being Loon. Like, Lauren can just continue on her life as Lauren and as Loon, and she doesn't really have to face much of a difference for it besides letting Kym and Will on it. But before season 3, everyone thought that the office was going to figure out that she was Loon, because she just wouldn't be able to make it to work, and that was going to be her consequence for being Loon. And it was going to be like this lesson that you can't keep like this double life forever. And there are like problems that arise with it. And I at least thought that, hey, we're going to see Lauren solve this issue of the office thinks that she's Loon now, or how does she do that if she is even able to do that, because she's going to be incapacitated due to her injuries. But then Kieran comes in and just solves the issue for her while she's unconscious, and we just find out over a narration when she wakes up on how he did it. And I don't know, it's frustrating to see that, because I want to see Lauren solve these issues because they're her issues, right? And I'm grateful that Kieran came in and was like, hey, I can help you, but he does like most of the work for her along with like Tristan. And I do want to point this out, this very specific parallel, well, not really parallel, but contradiction. I listened to the I listened to the 109 podcast, and you guys pointed out that it was really nice to see Kieran come in and be like, hey, I can help you, right? And that he's stopping Lauren from being like, I can just take this on myself. And I agree that it was a really nice sentiment. It's really nice to see Kieran be willing to help Lauren, but there's some times where he's making her devoid of agency, and he's just completely solving the issue for Lauren before she can solve the issue. And this happens in episode 81, where he just completely solves the stake case for her, and she doesn't have to worry about being framed for murder anymore because he just got all the evidence for her, even though this plot line was between her and Sake, and Kieran was completely unrelated. And just this general fix everything trait, it's admired in Kieran. It's like, it's a virtue in Kieran, the way he can just fix everything for Lauren. But if it's a virtue for Kieran, why is it a flaw in Will? Because Will was previously established in like the early 60s that he also has this fix everything trait where he needs to fix everything. And Kym calls him out on it in 64, where she's like, you don't have to fix everything, Will. So why is, when Will tries to fix things, generally, like, why is it portrayed as a flaw, but when Kieran tries to do it, it's portrayed as a virtue? And like, he, even though like narratively too, it's just not great for Lauren's character.
I think that's a good question, but I think we should save it for another episode because we want to finish the last scene. But I do think there's what to say on that.
I'll leave the listeners on that, and you guys can comment what your thoughts on it or whatever.
So we see now a month later, and we see a fire smoldering in the cave, Lauren sitting in a chair, and she says, "What did you want to tell me that made you come all the way over here?" And we see fire, we see a pair of shoes, we see someone clenching a hat, Neyra, right? And we see Neyra, we see her looking down wistfully, regretfully, something, and she says, "Lauren, he's dead." Ta-da! Okay.
I do have to go, so I'm just going to leave off with this, and then I've got to sign off. But I think definitely this is a bomb drop, because then, of course, that arises all the questions of who's dead. Why does Lauren look like she's in the cave by herself? When did she get a relationship with like the Lady Darcy? And there's a lot of questions that arise with that. But once again, after 6 episodes of having consequences pushed to the side, it didn't hit as hard of maybe as it could have.
Because you feel like it's just gonna be a fake out.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's gonna fake out. I feel like I've been teased enough where this is just another tease and there isn't a real stake. And that kind of sucks a little bit. I'm still obviously gonna read, but the stakes have changed for me. I don't think I'm gonna have an adrenaline rush every Monday night. And maybe that'll change. There's obviously still a lot of story to tell and for us to read. And don't get me wrong. I mean, Mindy, I love these characters, especially Kieran. He's one of my favorites. And that's not going to change for me. Probably not, unless something really significant happens to destroy that. I'm still going to love it. And I'm interested to see what happens. Yes, season 3 has some narrative issues that, and the lack of consequences is concerning, but overall, I'm still engaged, and I guess maybe that's the important thing in the story is you're still interested enough that the first season caught me good enough that even through all these issues, I'm still here. I'm still interested to find out where it's going, and I guess we'll just see tomorrow night. So I'm excited for that. But it's been fun to discuss with you, and Fwoot, it's been good. I know it's been a while. It's been good to discuss and get back together. But you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, and I will talk with you later.
Yeah. Bye. Bye. Yeah, so let's do it also in like literally a minute because I have
okay, so I was really surprised to see this cut to a month. Okay, so if it's a month now, it's probably like February 25th or 26th at this point. So coming to the end of the month, and this means that we have skipped some very significant points in the story, that being the Redcliffe ball.
Right. So I think this is just like a future drop, and I think episodes will go back.
Yeah,
this would just like, tantalize us.
Yeah, but I don't want to say this, but it's just I did not like this jump to a month because first it was very jarring, and it's very obvious that. And second, because it's very obvious that we're gonna have to go back and explain everything that got to this point. So it just feels like cheap drama for me. And I honestly, I don't even feel bothered to speculate on who he is, because literally like 70% of the characters in Pearl Hyacinth are dudes, and he could literally be anyone. And it's just not worth my time as a theorist to speculate on just theory bait, And that's what this is. And that's what Meg was saying. It's just bait, And I don't know, it's like after the factory arc too, what Meg said really resonated with me, like right before she left, about how, you know, they keep setting up these consequences, but then they don't follow through with these consequences. And that is literally what we saw on a much smaller scale in the factory arc. And Mindy, I don't know if you remember this, but I think in the episode 99 podcast, I had pointed out how the episodes kept building to something, right? So like the arrest, and then the next episode would be something like completely different, and it would just like drop off on that plot point, and the characters would be doing something else, you know, or something would dramatically change and they would be doing something else. So we don't actually see the actions that they build to follow through. And, you know, just, it's because we kind of do have to go back a month. I just don't really understand why they would put this scene in here, if not just to like, you know, again, like,
yeah, I think it's to be a cliffhanger for us, that's all. So I think it was just to
cliffhanger?
satisfy, like to make a cool cliffhanger for the end of the season.
Yeah, but now we have to wait probably like another like 40 episodes to get to this point. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't deal with this, you know? Like, I don't want to have to think about who he is for like the next 8 months.
But
Like that's something I don't want to spend my time doing.
we're gonna see more of Lady Elena, Neyra, Darcy, so
Yeah,
that's good.
I will take that. I was like, bro, I saw her and I was like, bestie, I'm on my knee. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But I was like, I was surprised to see her, and I wonder like what is she doing in the cave. But I do want to say that something that is holding me back from being like super invested in this scene is that it's just, you know, cut from who knows what. We have zero context for this scene. It's a month later, and a month is literally like half of the time that Purple Hyacinth has spanned right now, because the beginning of season 1 starts off in November and we're in like mid-November, and now we're in late January. It's been 2 months.
Well, 3 years later, we'll find out.
Yeah, three months later, I guess, like, or sorry, 3 years later. And so like it does raise a lot of questions about what Neyra's doing in the cave, and like how she knows about it, obviously, and who he is. And some people were saying that he is like, what if like he is Dylan, or what if he is Sandman? And a lot of people think that it was Sandman, and I could definitely see it being Sandman, because he does have a lot of death flags, and it is kind of only a matter of time till he is killed by the Phantom Scythe. But then it raises the question, how does Neyra know Sandman? And I was thinking, you know, what if Neyra was a car kid? And Mindy, I'm not sure if you remember this theory, but I had a theory that Bella and Dylan were the car kids.
I think so, yeah.
But what if it's either Neyra and Dylan, or Neyra and Bella were the car kids? I think it would be interesting for like, sorry, I just want to get this quickly. Neyra and Dylan, that would let Neyra in on Dylan, and that's how she would know Dylan, in the case that maybe it's Dylan who's dead. And then if Neyra was a car kid, you know, it would, I don't know how that would work into the car kids are dead, like Kieran said. But again, Kieran, the reason I think it's very important to point out that what Kieran says about the car kids being dead, he's building off like the legend in the Phantom Scythe. So it's like a story, you know, we don't actually know if it's fact. But this would be I just want to say this would be an interesting way for the Bella RC backstory on how Bella and Neyra met, because maybe, and it would be like a really nice parallel to how Darcy approached Bella in the late 80s, because Darcy was looking for Bella's help to escape. So what if they already had escaped once, and Bella had helped Darcy escape from the Phantom Scythe when she got kidnapped?
Yeah, that would be a cool parallel. Anywho, we will find out within the next couple months, and I will see you shortly. So
yeah, see you later tonight. It's fun discussing this.
Yep, I'll see you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much to my Kieran patrons: Susie, Lady Libris, Lily, Jenny, Haley, Molly, Veronica, Emily Jo, Rochelle, Saucy Tuggles, Meg, Ann, Rose, Priya, Alexa, Misty, Laura, Joanne, Patty, Emilta, Esther, and watching people, Taurus, Poppy, Marie, Jen, Emily, Jean, Jen, Erin, D, Kay, Lily, Beckett, Duranda, Christine, Sadie, Kelly, Daniel, Louisa, Mr. Gastaldo, and Kaylee. Your support is truly appreciated.